This said as a broad introductory statement, I just want to highlight the 8 sectors about which we are going to talk, where reforms are being brought in. Coal, minerals, defense production. I read out separately the next 3, although they together contribute for flying, airports, and also aerospace-related matters. Airspace management, airports, MRO, which is maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So those 3 all go over to the civil aviation area. Distribution companies in the union territories, power distribution companies in the union territories. Space sector, where ISRO and others have been flag bearers for India. Atomic energy. So 8 sectors, but I will be showing you about 10 to 12 slides, all of them explaining each one of these sectors in detail. The first of the 8 sectors that I want to speak about is coal. There are 4 slides all speaking about the various steps, but I will run through about all the 4, even though the sequencing may be a bit different. We are bringing in commercial mining in coal sector. You know, coal, as all of you all know, coal is a government monopoly. That government monopoly is what is now being removed. Commercial mining of coal on a revenue sharing basis would help more coal availability and also more coal availability at market prices. So this will be far more efficient and more people can get to using it. Liberalized entries will be allowed for people to participate for a range of coal blocks, and for those who produce well before the deadline, incentives also will be given. But let's first understand, if India, which is the 3rd richest or which has the 3rd largest and 3rd large valued coal availability in its mines, in untapped mines, meaning it has the 3rd valuable deposit of coal, and we still import coal, and we still sometimes feel that the energy sector is suffering because raw material is not available. So regulations are required, and this line you would recall I have said day before yesterday, I have also said yesterday, regulations are required when there is a shortage. But this country has got abundant coal, and we've been regulating it, suffocating it from producing ample quantity of coal which will be required by the industry. Economy can be benefiting from this kind of opening up. Of course, we are conscious that coal is not so environment friendly. So in order to have coal converted into gas, we are providing incentive so that coal is also used, but the environment commitments of India are honored, and we benefit from gasification of coal. And also the coal bed methane also will be auctioned, so that these coal beds which are with Coal India but untapped also can benefit the country. So the coal bed methane extraction also will happen through auctioning. 50,000 crores will be spent by Government of India for creating evacuation infrastructure, because after the coal is mined, brought to the pit head, you don't have enough right kind of infrastructure to have this mined coal evacuated from there. So 50,000 crores is being given to ensure that evacuation infrastructure is provided. So this is, in short, what is being done to bring in reforms in the coal sector. I move to mining of minerals. We spoke about coal all the while, now we talk about minerals. Minerals, the sectoral reform that we want to bring in order that we have a boost given for growth of the sector, better employment potential, and bring in state-of-the-art technology, is to now have a seamless composite exploration come mining come production regime. Earlier, somebody was doing the exploration, someone else had to again come and undergo the whole process of auction, bids and so on to start the mining. And then once the mining activity starts, the production is subsequent. All these were dealt with in separate silos. So now what is being suggested is for ease of everybody participating and also the stakeholders, a seamless composite exploration come mining come production regime is being brought in. So there is no uncertainty for somebody who invests a big quantum of money for exploration whether he'll be able eventually to to mine the mineral. So that system is going to make it easy. 500 mining blocks would be offered through this open, transparent mechanism. And if I take the example of aluminium, the way in which things had happened, the prevailing by the prevailing setup, if somebody wants bauxite, which is a necessary raw material for aluminium, he had to go for an auction for bauxite. And then he would realize that he doesn't have enough power to generate, or power supply is erratic. Then he would turn around saying, can I have some coal from somewhere? If he doesn't get it, or if he doesn't have enough power supply, he ends up sitting with the raw material but not being able to produce aluminium. So many such people had left this country and gone and invested elsewhere because of these mismatched policy. So what we are now taking the example of aluminium telling you is joint auction of the necessary two, like bauxite and coal, will happen so that it can enhance aluminium industry's competitiveness and will help aluminium industry now to reduce electricity costs, because they would be given the coal, they can gasify it and then use it, or use it in the other way. So that is one major step that we want to take in order that the mineral sector is better facilitated. And then we would also like to remove the distinction between captive and non-captive mines. So that will also help in transferring of mining leases and sale of surplus and sale of unused minerals. So I've had a mine given to me, I've taken some mineral out of it, but later I've lost interest, I don't have the capacity anymore. The left unused mineral lies there, nobody else benefits out of it. So now we are permitting them to transfer the mining lease so that whoever is interested in using the rest of it, which has been kept there, meaning which is lying there unmined, they can also use it, so the country can benefit from it. Then the Ministry of Mines is in the process of developing a mineral index for different minerals. The process is ongoing. Then a rationalization of stamp duty, which is payable at the time of award of mining leases, is also happening. So these two slides have clearly told you about the various reform steps that we're taking in order that this country, which is rich in minerals, gets timely served by the availability of the minerals for the industries to benefit from. Make in India and self-reliance have now, as I said, become a partner in the sense of, for self-reliance, Make in India is absolutely necessary. And particularly when you're talking about critical industries like defense, we need to be self-reliant where we really can be. Of course, armed forces require best of equipments. They need some of the latest technology-driven equipments. Some high-tech equipments are required, which have to be imported. They can be imported. And it continues. We are seeing very good latest weaponry coming also. But some of those which are being produced in India can be bought in India, and therefore we have now come to a conclusion that we shall notify. This is done with the consultation with the Department of Military Affairs. We shall notify a list of weapons and platforms which shall be not allowed for import, but we shall have them bought from India. So the import of this listed set of equipments shall not be allowed. They shall be banned. And every year this list will be increased because more capacities which come to be recognized, which meet the standards, which meet the defense standards, will be obtained from India. As they say, the defense is general staff qualitative requirements, the GSQRs for weapons and platforms will all be honored, but those list of items which get notified can only be purchased from India. Indigenization of some imported spares will also be given priority. For years we have been producing spares which are good enough for even those imported vectors, imported weaponry, imported platforms. Unless we are able to do that, the spares are also something which India probably can produce but are getting imported. So indigenization of imported spares. Then for all this, a budget provision, a separate budget provision will also be given for domestic capital procurement. So this is going to be something with which the defense can make sure that their import bill can come down. This is done in consultation with the Department of Military Affairs, and this will be an important step towards making sure that Indian producers of defense equipments which are absolutely meeting with the standards which the armed forces would want will be purchased from India. The next step in defense production related reform is to improve the autonomy, accountability and efficiency in ordnance supplies which are being made by the ordnance factories. And for this, we intend to corporatize ordnance factory boards. I like to emphasize here, corporatization is not privatization. It doesn't mean that the ordnance factory boards are going to be privatized. No, they're not being privatized. But corporatized they will be. We want them to be better managed. We also eventually hope that they will get listed in the stock market. Ordinary Indian citizens can also buy shares in them. And through that, we expect that the ordnance factory boards and their processes, decision-making, output, performance, all of them will be transparent for the Indian citizens. So ordnance factory boards will be corporatized, not privatized. I want to underline that, and I want media friends to please differentiate between corporatization and privatization. The next set of things about defense production is that FDI limits are being raised from 49% to 74%. Of course, it will have the security clearances and everything else as always. And then we'll also have a mechanism established so that time-bound defense procurement processes happen. There will be a project management unit set up. Support will be given for contract management purposes. Then as I said earlier, a realistic setting for the general staff qualitative requirements, the GSQRs as they're known, of weapons and platforms will be made, because sometimes unrealistic quality requirements are established and quite a lot of time is spent in searching for suppliers who will meet all those requirements. You end up with just one supplier, and just buying it from one supplier is not permitted, and then you do the entire circle all over again. So realistic setting of qualitative requirements is something on which we'll place emphasis, and above all, overhauling of the trial and testing processes. Yes, we understand India is a country which has different climatic and geospatial requirements, tropical, coastal, Himalayan, high altitude and everything else, but we still need to be far more efficient in trial and testing of procedures. The next three relate to civil aviation. I'll be fairly speedy about them. One relates to airspace management. The next relates to PPP and airports which are being given for management and maintenance. Then MRO hub. The three are put together relating to civil aviation. The first is the airspace management. Just to give you a background, only about 60% of the Indian airspace is freely available. And that's because airspace is fairly restricted for its use for civil purposes and defense purposes. This means that all these years, all these decades, we have been flying to some most destinations, not through the shortest route, but slightly longer routes, which means you're having more time in the air. This actually has to be rationalized. Optimum utilization of airspace is best, because after all, the fuel spent is also something which we import. Huge bill goes for that. Finally, the customer ends up paying more price for the flying, and for pilots it's a extra hour of flying or half an hour of flying. Above all, if we are able to optimally utilize the airspace and reach quickly, every one of our time is saved, and therefore now rationalization is going to happen. We will be able to get to our destination at the shortest possible time, thus saving travel time, thus saving fuel, thus saving also the pilot's flying time. This is an environment-friendly step, but having very big implication on India's fuel importable and also for civil aviation, which in India has biggest potential in growth. Civil aviation is up for a big leap. So the airspace availability through which the flying time is influenced is going to be better. That is one. The second that I'd like to tell you about is 6 more airports are for auction, and the Airports Authority of India shall do it on public-private basis, PPP basis. Additional investments also are likely to happen by private players in about 12 airports, which they are already holding, for better world-class facilities to be brought in. So majorly, airports in India will become far more with better facility and customer experience. This has financial implications to the extent not so much for the budget, but the AAI, the Airports Authority of India, will get a down payment of 2,300 crores, and also the first and second rounds of investments are expected to get 13,000 crores. So this is one step which will at a time increase better facilities and also make our airports a lot more worthy experience for the passengers. The third in this, because it's all pertain to civil aviation, is making India an MRO hub. This was mentioned also in the budget. Maintenance, repair and overhaul of aircrafts is a big business. Most of the Indian aircrafts themselves go abroad to do their repair works, spend on parts there, and also come back for after the overhaul to India. But maintenance and repair and overall, India has all the capacities, manpower skills required, soft skills required, and also India can then be the center for many of the flights which go towards Southeast Asia, long distance to Australia, similarly westwards also. If we make sure that MRO's ecosystem is created in India, for which the tax regime has already been altered so that it favors setting up MRO in India, this is a major step that we want to make sure that India benefits from. And in this, not just civil aircrafts, but also defense aircrafts can also be benefiting from the MRO, which if we make India as a huge hub. Maintenance cost for all airlines will come down, and that again will have a ripple effect on the passengers. The travelers can probably pay less after that. So these are 3 put together reforms for the civil aviation sector. I move to talking about the next reform step. The power distribution companies in union territories shall be privatized. And that is likely to be also, it will be in line with the tariff policy which is soon to be announced. The tariff policy reform will of course talk about consumer rights. The inefficiencies of DISCOMs will not become a burden on consumers. DISCOMs will ensure adequate power. The standard of service that they provide will improve, and they will promote industry better by providing open access. Sustainability is an issue with power sector. We want to be sure that timely payments to the GENCOs happen. You are aware that 90,000 crores have been given this time because DISCOMs were not able to pay or service their dues to the GENCOs. Such disruptions or ups and downs should be avoided, and DBT also for subsidy receiving beneficiaries will be given directly, and smart prepaid meters will be set up, about which I had mentioned in the budget also. So tariff policy coming into place will also see one more major step, in that in the union territories we shall make sure that the DISCOMs are privatized. Suboptimal performance of power distribution and supply can never be in favor of the customer. So that is as regards power sector reforms. The next is on social infra projects. For creation of social infrastructure projects, which are like hospitals, because India needs a ramp up on social infrastructure, government has made a provision for 8,100 crores, that will be the total outlay, which will be going in the form of viability gap funding. So, in general, for most projects which are supported by government or states or the statutory bodies, 20% is what is given as viability gap funding. But in this case of social infrastructure, government has decided to give 30% viability gap funding. So the quantum is increased from 20 to 30%. Through this, we expect that the urgent requirement for social infrastructure all over the country is not just going to be developed by government, but also private enterprises will come in because of this viability gap funding which we want to provide, and that is an increased viability gap funding. The last two reform steps that I want to announce relate to space and space. The next one relates to atomic energy. First, in space, you know that India has had the benefit of an extraordinary institution such as the ISRO. ISRO has brought the nation a lot of laurels. However, today, private sector is also doing a lot of work in the space arena. A lot of individuals and startups have spent a lot of time developing space-related technologies. Unfortunately, because of the Indian regulations, they are even unable to use ISRO's available facilities for even testing their products. So what we want to do now, in order to provide level playing field for private companies, satellite launches and space-based services, we will make a provision for them to benefit from the assets which are available with the ISRO, and for India to benefit from it. We'll also provide predictable policy and regulatory environment for private players. We want them to be co-travelers with us, and therefore private sector is being encouraged. And also for future projects for planetary explorations and outer space travel, it will also be open for private sector. So in short, private sector is being given a good access to this space area where both government and private sector can work for a better Atmanirbhar Bharat. Another important aspect is there's a lot of geospatial data in India for Indians particularly like startups which are looking at doing a lot of irrigation work, drought-prone area development work, groundwater work. They don't most often get the data within India. They go getting it from abroad, data about India, paying through their nose for some good work that they do for India itself. So a liberal geospatial data policy is something which we like to work, and we want to provide remote sensing data to tech entrepreneurs, but of course with a lot of sense of caution, because this is a very sensitive area. We want to also give the benefit and the advantage to the Indian startups who are also doing pioneering work. The last step for today under the set of reforms that we are announcing is related to atomic energy related reforms. There shall be a research reactor in PPP model which will be established only for the production of medical isotopes. Now, medical isotopes are increasingly used in cancer treatment. In fact, India has earned a lot of goodwill from very many countries which had India supply them these isotopes. So, absolutely for promoting welfare of humanity through affordable treatment for cancer and other diseases, we shall be establishing a research reactor in PPP mode, and that will produce medical isotopes. The next is establishing facilities in, again, PPP mode. Atomic energy is completely with the government, but here are the ways in which we are bringing in the PPP mode, establishing facilities in PPP mode to use irradiation technology, the radiation technology, for food preservation. Radiation technology, as you know, at one point in time the government also was discussing it, and a lot of you all were asking us questions. In crops which are like perishable crops like onions, most often when there is a good crop, because of its short shelf life, they are normally sold at a absolutely low price, or they are left to rot. Whereas when you use radiation technology, we are able to provide it the necessary qualities with which it can be stored for a longer time. Shelf life of perishable goods like onions can be improved and longevity given. This is something on which technology development incubation centers being established now will also set up a kind of synergy between research facilities and tech entrepreneurs who can develop such technologies which will be used for very many daily use matters such as vegetables and fruits preservation and so on. So this pertains to reforms in atomic energy, and that's my last slide.